Alright, so today I want to introduce you to the Super Chocolate ball python. The Super Chocolate consists of 2 copies of the co-dominant chocolate gene, and the chocolate's pretty interesting. It's actually a dark gene when you mix it with other combinations. A lot of times it'll darken the background of combinations, but I'd say it's not really that visually dominant. As a matter of fact, I've actually seen over on Morphmarket, a lot of people list their snakes as possible chocolate. Sometimes you can't hardly see the chocolate in there, and sometimes you can, but if you actually make the Super Chocolate with 2 copies of the chocolate, you get a pretty visually dominant combination that when you work other genes into the mix, you can make some really impressive super chocolate combinations. And kind of the cool thing about the Super Chocolate is if you have like the black pastel or the cinnamon, which are dark genes, and you make the super, it's almost like a patternless, almost jet black snake. And a lot of times it's really hard to work other genes into the super cinnamon or super black pastel, but working genes into the Super Chocolate, let me tell you, there's a lot of potential to get some really amazing combinations. So I'm going to jump over the internet and I want to show you the potential of the Super Chocolate ball python. Alright, so I'm going to jump back and forth between the world of ball pythons and Morphmarket, and I want to start with the chocolate. This is what a chocolate looks like, just 1 copy of the chocolate gene. And the chocolate, some people actually list them over here as possible chocolates, because if you actually take a look at this, it looks pretty close to a normal ball python. And usually the chocolates will have a little bit of a darker background. I've actually seen quite a few chocolates with kind of a coppery color, almost like a bronze color coming through a lot of the snake, almost like a really light bronze. They can kind of vary from one to the other. And a lot of times the chocolate will have kind of a reduced pattern on the sides of the snake, although I have seen some chocolates that look really close to normals with the alien heads and everything. Sometimes it's really hard to tell if you actually have chocolate or not. If you actually take 2 chocolates and breed them together, 25% of the time you get a Super Chocolate. Take a look at this. This is pretty amazing. As a matter of fact, when you're working other genes into the Super Chocolate, you definitely have a really visually dominant effect with the Super Chocolate, working it into other combinations. And you can definitely tell on this one it really brings out a lot of the almost like a coppery, almost like a bronze color, and it really reduces the pattern even further in the Super Chocolate. And pretty much every single time you can definitely tell Super Chocolate is in the mix when you're mixing in other genes. So what I want to do is I want to show you some of these other genes, first the gene by itself, and then mixed in with Super Chocolate, so you can really see the potential of working with the Super Chocolate. And the first one I want to start with is the Pastel, and this is probably one of the brightest pastels I've seen. Pastels are usually really bright yellow. Some of them are kind of faded out, and usually pastels can kind of brown out as they age and mature, although I have seen some really bright adult pastels, kind of unusual. And here's what happens if you work pastel into the Super Chocolate. Take a look at this. Essentially what it does, it almost looks like the Super Chocolate, but it really cleans it up, really kind of smooths it out, brings a little bit more color to the coppery color of the snake. As a matter of fact, I actually pulled up a Super Pastel. We can actually look at the 2 copies of Pastel worked into the Super Chocolate, which is a little bit harder to hit because you have 2 supers, which is, you know, if you actually take the Super Pastel, Super Chocolate, bread it to something else, you get all pastel chocolates, and then you have to breed those together to get a Super Pastel, Super Chocolate. But kind of the cool thing about the Super Pastel is it really jumbles up the pattern and reduces it even more in a lot of your Super Pastels and Super Pastel combos. So here's what happens if you actually mix the Super Pastel in with the Super Chocolate. Take a look at this. This is pretty amazing. I can't say I've ever really seen a snake that looks like this. Pretty amazing combination with the Super Pastel and the Super Chocolate. As such, you can definitely tell the Super Pastel is really reducing the pattern even more and kind of bringing it down to almost just these little islands all over the snake. And then the Super Chocolate is still really keeping a lot of this darker background and kind of a bronze color in the snake. Pretty awesome. So here is the GHI. The GHI is actually another dark morph. GHI stands for Gotta Have It, kind of a clever little abbreviation of GHI. And the GHI, a lot of times, in addition to darkening the background, it'll also jumble up the pattern in a lot of your combinations. So here's what happens if you take GHI and work it into the Super Chocolate. Take a look at this. This is kind of interesting. You get a snake that looks kind of like the Super Chocolate, maybe a little bit more reduced than the Super super chocolate. As a matter of fact, I would have probably expected this to be a little bit darker from the influence of the DJI. And that just kind of shows you the visual dominance of the super chocolate, working it into some of these other jeans. So here is the banana. When it comes to visual dominance, usually the banana is probably right under albino. I say albino is probably number one. You mix anything with albino and you get an albino looking snake that usually has kind of a jumbled up pattern. And the banana is kind of cool because it's really visually dominant, but it kind of is a little more forgiving than the albino. You mix it in with some combos and you can get some pretty amazing results. And the banana is actually co-dominant. So if you breed the banana to something else, half the offspring come out as banana. And here's what happens if you work banana into the super chocolate. Take a look at this. This is pretty amazing that the super chocolate almost trumps the banana, which is quite an accomplishment for almost any gene or combination. It's pretty amazing. You can definitely see the banana is in the mix, but look what the super chocolate does. It really reduces the pattern and brings out a lot of the darker background in the banana. Pretty amazing combination. So here is the ghost. The ghost is actually kind of interesting. The ghost is also called hypo, which is a recessive gene. And the ghost, there can be quite a few versions of the ghost. Some of them look kind of orange like this, and some of them look almost like normals. And essentially what the ghost does is it really kind of fades out the snake. Almost looks like the snake is going into shed. And let me tell you, probably my favorite super chocolate combo is working ghost into super chocolate. Take a look at this. This is pretty amazing. Pretty amazing effect when you work the hypo into the super chocolate, and you end up with this kind of almost looks like a grayish blue background, which I've never really seen in any other combination. It's pretty amazing. As a matter of fact, there's also an orange ghost that brings in a lot of orange into combinations. I've actually seen the same thing with the orange ghost, and essentially what the orange ghost does is it kind of almost eliminates the bluish gray. Kind of depends on what effect you're going with when you're mixing ghost into your super chocolate. But let me tell you, I think probably my favorite hypo combo is working it into super chocolate. As a matter of fact, I've seen most of the super chocolates over here are like het for ghost. It seems like a lot of people are really going for this combo. It's really popular with the super chocolate. So here is the pinstripe. The pinstripe's one of my favorite genes. The pinstripe's actually a dominant mutation, so you breed it to something else, half the offspring come out as pinstripe. And the pinstripe's probably the brightest gold snake. You can get really super bright gold. And sometimes like the pinstripe hatchlings are like glowing bright gold. It's pretty amazing. They almost look like they're made of metal or something, like have a metallic finish to it. It's pretty awesome gene. Here's what happens if you work pinstripe into the super chocolate. Take a look at this. You get a combination that is known as the camo, or some people actually call it the camouflage, which is a kind of an interesting combination. This is the pinstripe super chocolate. And essentially what it does, it takes the pinstripe, kind of darkens the pinstripe and really jumbles up the pattern, makes for a really amazing combination. So here is the cinnamon. Speaking of cinnamon, if you actually, start with the super cinnamon, I'd say it's pretty hard to, actually work with the super cinnamon because it's a completely black, patternless snake. And you can actually do some really cool things with the super cinnamon. The cinnamon's also allelic with the black pastel. Here's what happens if you actually work the cinnamon into the super chocolate. Take a look at this. This is probably one of the darkest super chocolate combinations. So you start with a pretty dark snake, and with the super chocolate. Then when you add the cinnamon, it really darkens the background of the snake even further than it was originally. And that is pretty amazing. If you're actually going for the dark genes, I'd say this is probably one of my favorite really super dark ball pythons. Pretty amazing. So here's the last one I wanted to show you. This is actually the Mojave. The Mojave is in the blue-eyed leucistic complex. So when you're breeding Mojave to something else, if you actually breed it to something else in the blue-eyed leucistic, you can end up with an all-white snake with blue eyes. And if you actually do make the all-white snake, it pretty much trumps everything else, all the other genes in the white snake. You can have, a super Mojave, super chocolate, and then you'll end up with an all-white snake with blue eyes. It basically trumps everything. And the Mojave is a really dark gene. And lot of times when you mix it in with other dark jeans, you get a really impressive combination. So here's what happens when you're Mojave into the super chocolate. Take a look at this crazy snake. That is pretty amazing. They end up with this crazy looking super chocolate Mojave. I'd say, you know, out of all the snakes, I would probably buy this one. I was just kind of wondering what the price was on this one. This actually sold for $500. Pretty amazing combination. All right, so it is time for the question of the day. And Devin Moore asks, what's the best morph to breed to a super pastel ball python? And that is a very good question. As a matter of fact, I actually did a video on the super pastel. And let me tell you, the super pastel just by itself, working other genes into the super pastel, you can make some really crazy combinations. And I'd say if you actually have a super pastel, probably what I would do is I would breed another super pastel to it, or something at least with one copy of the pastel, so you can get 50% super pastels with other genes mixed in the mix. It's a really amazing combination, and when you actually work other genes into super pastel, you can get some of the craziest looking, really bright and flashy ball pythons. And keep in mind, with the super pastel, it's actually a bright gene, so if you mix in other genes like fire or orange dream or yellow belly, you can make some really super bright, really high contrast, flashy snakes. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.